I'm Jaden Sterling, and welcome to my podcast, Intuitive Investing. As an entrepreneur and someone who has taught people how to invest for 34 years, I have a good sense of what it takes to thrive as an investor. Each week on my show, I provide tools and tips, as well as interview world-class investors on their strategies. When your gut and research match, your ability to live a life of financial freedom is easy. Welcome to Intuitive Investing, and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Intuitive Investing Podcast. I've got a cool guest for you today. Her name is Terri Britt, and Terri is a spiritual coach, intuitive healer, TEDx speaker, the founder of Women Leaders of Love Global Community. How cool is that? I'm telling you, you're going to just love what she has to say. She's an award-winning author, prolific author. Terri's a sought-after media expert and has shared the stage with Marianne Williamson, John Gray, Jack Canfield. She's a wife, mom, stepmom, nana, and the former TV host of Movie Time, now known as the E! Channel. Terri, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I could tell you stories about investments that didn't work because we didn't listen to our intuition. I can tell you some good things that did happen from listening to your intuition.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I'm so intrigued with you. You have this incredible history of a beauty pageant, but then the story that goes along with that. Please share with our audience. I know they want to hear.
Well, I'm not sure which part of the story you're talking about, but if it's winning Miss USA, I left school because I listened to my intuition. I was in my second semester of my sophomore year of school, of college, and I was miserable. You know how you know when you want to change, right? You want something to change and you just don't know how to do it. I was living in Arkansas, grew up there. I knew my intuition was telling me I was supposed to go to California, but I did not know how to get there. I didn't have the money. I was looking at schools and you had to have foreign language. I didn't have any foreign language in Arkansas. It was not part of my life. So I kind of gave it up. Well, in my second semester of my sophomore year of college, I was miserable. I mean, absolutely miserable. I'd followed my boyfriend to a school that had no broadcasting department, and yet I wanted to get into broadcasting. So I was just not doing what was right for me. And yet my soul was going, go here, go here, go here. So finally, I am at home one weekend in my second semester, and I'm talking to a friend on the phone. I said, I hate school. I don't want to go. And you have to understand, I was a person who was a straight A student, graduated second in my class in high school, went to college on scholarship. So for me to hate school so much and talk about, oh, I just don't want to go, was a real challenge for me. But my friend who was not in school said, so don't go. And I said, well, I have to. And he said, says who? I think that was the first time I've ever felt my intuition just wash over me. I knew right then that I couldn't do this anymore. It was as if there was something that was just grabbing me and saying, you're done. You're done, Terri. So I got off the phone, ran to my mom and dad and said, I can't do it. I cannot do this anymore. I'm fried. It's not right for me. Thankfully, they supported me. It was so crazy because as soon as I made that decision, and I was already in my school, the school year, so I was in an apartment with girls. I had to find someone to take over my apartment. I moved home, but it all happened like this. I mean, it was just like clockwork. It was crazy. So I was selling shoes at a department store, and a former Miss Arkansas came in. I had been in Miss Arkansas. This is the USA system. And I had been in Miss Arkansas the year prior, didn't play. I mean, I made top 5, but I didn't win. And I said, that's it. I didn't get my break. I was doing anything, right? Well, I introduced myself to her because I now had short brown hair and she didn't recognize me because my hair had been longer before. So she said, well, are you going to be in the pageant this year? I said, no, I just wanted a break. She said, I told her, explained I wanted to get into television or whatever. And she said, well, a production company out of Miami just bought Miss Arkansas. You might want to consider going into it. So Jared, I did. I went in, my mama made my dress. I think this was probably January, February. I was in this, I got the job. It was probably in March. I went into Miss Arkansas in April, won. 2 weeks later, got sent to Miss USA and won. I got on stage and talked about drinking beer and dipping skull on the back of a pickup truck. I mean, Bob Barker says, "What do you do in Cabot, Arkansas on a Saturday night? Population 4,000." I said, "Well, in the winter we stay at home, Bob, but in the summer we go down to Tasty Freeze. We sit on the back of my friend's truck. He plays the banjo, and the guys drink a little beer and dip a little skull. It's a real good time." And I won. I won Miss USA. Now, a lot of things happened for me that night in that moment of winning. At first, of course, I was excited. And then the next thing I felt was emptiness. And then the next thing I felt was guilty, because if you can imagine feeling guilty, which is what my TEDx I started talking about. But I felt guilty because I knew I was going to leave my boyfriend behind and I was going to be sent to New York. Thankfully, I let go of the guilt, because I almost gave back the crown that night. I literally considered giving it back. So I didn't have a lot of permission to receive, right? But my parents talked me into it, and thankfully I went on about it. But here's what was interesting. And this is where a lot of fears around money came up. I gave my dad my money that I won as Miss USA. I had $150,000 in cash and prizes, half cash, half prizes. I gave it to him to invest because I had always been taught to give your power to other people, give my power to my dad. So I gave it to him, and he lost everything. He lost every penny. I think in the end, because I had to sell my prizes, most of them to pay the taxes. And I think in the end, I had about $10,000, and I didn't have to pay a penny that whole year. I mean, my apartment in New York was taken care of, my food, my travel. I didn't, unless I just wanted extra expenses. And it was so funny because my traveling companion, who was still a very dear friend, she said, "You're going to have the first nickel you ever earned between your thumb and your forefinger on the day you die." And she was kind of right. I didn't have permission to receive. Okay. I didn't have permission to receive abundance. But it was okay. It was like, okay, well, whatever. I lived in emotional chaos. Okay. I was always thinking about what I needed to do. And even though I worked in television, had a great job at Movie Time, which became the E channel, I was always here in my head, never really listening. It was like I listened for Miss USA, but it was as if that intuition just got pushed to the back burner, got put to the side. Well, I ended up leaving television and became a wife and mom. I married my husband, Steve, who I was with for almost 19 years, married 17, and then he died. And I realized I wasn't very good at it. Again, I was always in my head. What do you have to do to make others happy? What do you have to do to help others? And with Steve, he was very, very successful. He had a huge garment company when I came into his life. And I remember as I started, well, what happened was my dad died, and I realized that I had attached myself to my dad too much. And this was in 95. I had attached myself to his life, his way of being, pushing, shoving, always trying to achieve, always trying to win at life. And I was miserable. And because of it, I had a lot of anger issues, and I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to project that onto my family. I didn't want to feel the walls between my hubby and me that had already been built up because of my anger. I just wanted something different. So I made a decision to heal. I made a decision to change my life, and I ended up in an energy school. Now, can you imagine going from this Miss USA Southern girl, and in the way that the school came about is I was in therapy, and my therapist said, "You're wound really tight." She says, "You need to get into meditation." You know, that's not too woo-woo. Back then it was a little woo-woo, but I ended up at a school, in an energy school. It was the Southern California Psychic Institute. And I end up at this school learning about energy and intuition. And the first night in class, the first night in meditation class, I see a spirit go across the room. Have you ever had that happen? Yes. He's young, yes. So as I see this spirit go across the room, of course, I'm in shock. I'm a little bit afraid because, growing up in the Bible Belt, we didn't talk about those kinds of things. We didn't have that experience. And I remember my teacher looking at me saying, you look like you've seen a ghost. I said, I think I have. I think I have. I see this man, and he's got a beard. And as I'm saying this, he comes up next to her and she goes, oh yeah, he's right here. She said, he's the founder of the school. So of course now I was intrigued. I was so intrigued because I'm thinking, wow, you mean I can see the other side? I can do this. So my passion was on fire. I wanted to know more. So I went into the intuitive healing classes, and then I eventually left that school and started learning about really tapping into my clairvoyance, to my intuition, to be able to help people, to see their blocks, to move them out. And as one of the things that we learned in class is how you would train is your teacher would say, you and you have matching pictures. You have similar stories. She didn't tell you what it was. And she'd say, go read each other. And then you would know that as you're clearing out the energy and looking at things, which of course, I had no idea I could do any of this, right? I didn't know that we all have intuitive abilities. I didn't understand that. It was just, I was like, holy crap, what is happening? But I could see people's stories. I could see what was blocking them. I could see their fears, but I'd be clearing them. But then when I had my matching picture pop up, I couldn't see anymore. It was because I was being triggered. My subconscious mind was being triggered. So our goal was, when that happened, to stop reading the person in front of you, go within, clear your energy, look for the matching picture, clear it out so you could come back in neutrality, no longer being in emotional chaos. Well, the more I did this, the more I allowed myself to heal my crap that would keep me in emotional chaos, the more intuitive I became. It was really cool because instead of living from false beliefs and chaos, I was getting connected. I was opening up to receive. I was opening up to guidance. So the more I did this, it was the coolest thing. Then it started overflowing into my family and my husband. And I remember one day I was at the library and I get this tape on Deepak Chopra, and I have to take this home. So I take it home and I start to watch. I'm like, wait, this isn't for me. This is a VHS tape. Okay, that's how long ago it was. And I'm watching this VHS tape. I said, this isn't for me. This is for Steve. Steve comes in. I said, you have to watch this. And he was really beginning to trust me at this point because I was getting so much information intuitively. He watches the tape and begins to cry. He said, I don't want to be an achiever anymore. I want to be a seeker. I want to let everything go. And we did. We let everything go. We put our house on the market. We didn't put our house on the market. We started letting people know we were going to put it on the market. Someone heard it sold without ever going on the market at the highest price. And all of a sudden we found ourselves on this magical adventure. But here's what happened. Because Steve had stepped away from everything, he was scared. Money had always been his driving factor. So he started to make some investments, and one investment was, it was a no-brainer. I mean, he invested in this business and flipped it literally within days. It seemed like a month or two, made $250,000. So he comes to me with this guy who had done the same investment, or the same man who had done this earlier investment. And Steve says, what do you think about this? Because we always talked. And I said, mm-mm. I said, no more than $100,000. I said, you can't. Well, he didn't listen. He invested almost $500,000. It was in a building in New Orleans. And it was a reconstruction situation. So they were getting all the investors, and then they had to get the reconstruction loan. And the week that it was being signed, the deal was going ahead, Katrina hit, the hurricane. Remember how it washed out New Orleans? And we lost all of that money. Never got it back. The whole thing went up in bankruptcy. So I started looking at all of this and realizing that he didn't listen to me. He didn't listen. And I didn't put that much energy on it. And then a few years later, he died. And when he died, he left a big chunk of money, right? So I had an investor that I started talking to, very, very successful investor, trusted this man. But I wanted everything to just sit in cash for a bit before I started investing. And they were pushing and pushing. And Jared, it was so crazy. It was like somebody had put a blanket over me. I mean, I couldn't move, even to the point where the financial advisor is saying, well, you've got some kind of fears. And I told him about my dad, losing my money and everything. But I couldn't move. I didn't realize it was my intuition then. And it was just months later that the crash happened in 2008. All of my friends who were investors had lost 30, 40, 50, 60% of their money. I did not lose a penny.
Nice. You have an incredible story. You have, from what I hear from you, multiple males in your life taking your money and losing it. And then you step up following your intuition and your gut feelings and say, nope, not the time. And Terri, that was the same moment in that market crash. I remember it clearly because I was in my summer home in North Carolina. Across the CNBC ticker tape the headline was, is the market going to zero? And my intuition told me, if there's ever a time to buy, it's now. And it was so hard to do. Like, I remember just shaking, like trying to click my mouse, to click the buy button, because everything that I was hearing and processing and everything thrown at us during that time was sell, 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 fear, fear, fear. But as Warren Buffett says so eloquently, you buy when there's blood in the streets. And,
It's a horrible thing, but I get
horrible thing, horrible visual. But there was so much angst around the market during that time that you were richly rewarded if you bought after the decline, not before it, because you're right, you would have, you experienced, and it happened fast. It was like literally overnight. It was a few trading days where the market just plummeted. And that is the reason, because I used to get caught up in story stocks, Terri. I don't know about you, but I would listen to a story about a company and be like, oh, that's amazing. Incredible story. This company is going to go to the moon. I have to buy shares of it. And in the past, that hasn't worked out great. So I followed my intuition, like you're talking about, and created software to help people invest their money so that they don't have to feel pressured from a banker or a broker. It actually takes, here, I'm going to share my screen so we can just take a quick look at it. But it actually takes the story out of the investment process, and it brings about, we calculate the financial metrics and the fundamental metrics and the technical indicators. And it actually makes a novice investor, someone who's brand new to investing, easily become an expert. And that's really what I said to my partners. I said, look, if we can create software that would take a novice investor 3 clicks to find a winning stock, I think we've got something. So you'll like this, Terri. There's a magic stock selector. So if you click that, it brings up a company that is within our wheelhouse, 5-star rated, buy rating. Look at this one. It's a defense and security solution company, below average risk. 5 stars is our premium rating for a company within our system. And that was 1 click, wasn't it? It was like, here, click this magic stock selector, and bam, you've got a stock that you can confidently buy shares of. You've got the price above all of the short and intermediate long-term indicators, which is what you want to see. You've got the money flow index below 50 at 43. Terri, that means this thing is a screaming buy. So yeah, we're very proud of our software. We've accomplished something that took 4.5 years. It's been 4.5 years in the making. And now we're sitting at an instance where we've offered it to the public. So anyone can check out our software. You just go to sterlingstockpicker.com. We have a basic plan and it's free. You don't even have to put in your credit card. Don't you hate it, Terry, when you have to put in your credit card for free stuff, right? That's really not free because eventually they're going to do whatever, but that's not us. We honor, we do business with the way that we like to be treated. So you have an opportunity to pick up the software, try it out for absolutely zero commitment and zero cost. And we recommend that. And I'm in here every week, Terry, on Mondays, live streaming. Here's my latest live stream where I break down that SVB deal, right? The Silicon Valley. And I thought about that, Terry. It's like Silicon. That's what my guides told me. The silly con that went on with that bank.
That's crazy. I love that.
Don't you? The guys are so good. Once you dive into what happened there, of course it couldn't have succeeded. Like it was just unbelievable how they operated for 40 plus years. So everyone check out when you have an opportunity, sterlingstockpicker.com. All right, Terry, back to you. Love your story. So much of what we're told, especially growing up in the school system, the government institutions, you got to really think things through and be careful. Analysis needs to go into this, and zero credit is given to our intuitive higher self. And I'm with you. Like when I started, I mean, I was, I was aware of this at age 4. So I'm thinking everyone has these abilities and this is the process that you go through. And we know that is the case, that everyone does have the ability, and especially children that are younger, the things out of their mouths, right? I'm sure you can think of things that either your grandchildren children have said. And so we're really taught to not trust in that guidance. And in reality is it can not only make you money, but it can make life so much simpler. Talk about eliminating the chaos in your life. Tell me, Terry, how do you on a daily basis go through and follow your intuition?
Well, first off, my whole mission is choosing unconditional self-love. When I really dove deep into my journey, it was I have to love and honor the way I was created. And it's not a religious thing, but to me, that's putting God first. I'm honoring and loving the way I was created. I'm putting God first. And so for me, as I've walked this path and always made unconditional self-love my number one priority, what I have felt is worthy. Okay, because I'm treating myself as if I'm worthy of being seen, heard, and valued. And what I've seen, and I call it my worthiness quotient, is that as I love myself this way, I move into a high worthiness quotient. And your worthiness quotient is your ability to receive love, nurturing, and support, whatever that looks like, simply for being you. So the way I was trained in my life and growing up in our family, that you live in a low worthiness quotient because you're always worried about what everyone else thinks. You're always making others the authority. And so what we know about energy is that whatever thoughts you feel or that you think and then they feel, they put out a vibration. Well, if you're always performing and you're always doing what you think you have to do and you're listening to others' opinions, what you're saying is who I am is not enough. What I feel is not enough. And so you come from a very low vibration of guilt or shame. And then we know in quantum physics that whatever energy you put out, you draw to you. And so if you're putting out guilt and shame in that performance of trying to, pay attention to everyone else instead of yourself, then you are going to attract things that feel like punishment. So that's a low worthiness quotient. And it's poverty consciousness. It's what's in our culture, right? It's what we do, perform, not listening to our intuition, like you just mentioned. But when we choose unconditional love, we are for ourselves, we cross the divide of lack and we move into a high worthiness quotient. Now we're open, we're receptive, not only to receive abundance, but also to receive guidance. So when I was talking about when I was in school, at the psychic school, and I would clean out my stuff from looking at matching pictures, what I was doing is I was one, treating myself as if I was worthy of being seen, heard, and valued because I was looking at my energy. And then I was giving myself permission to stand in my truth instead of making everyone else the boss of my life. I actually quit performing for my family. I quit trying to get it right for them. So everything changed in my home. My husband and I started getting along better. My kids, I mean, everything got better. But what I started feeling was really open and receptive. I felt worthy. I felt that I could really truly receive abundance. And what I saw this is that this unconditional self-love was prosperity consciousness. And it's been so amazing to practice this, that how do I choose prosperity consciousness? I choose to love myself, clear out any chaos by going in and looking at the beliefs. And the way I do that is I talk to the little girl inside of me. I say, what's hurting? What is the belief that's causing your pain and suffering? And I become the divine parent to her. And as I release that belief, like I did in my old classes, then I say, what is my truth? And when I follow my truth, I'm following my intuition. I'm following the guidance of my heart. Now, here's what's so cool. You mentioned early on about our coffee house. Well, Steve died many years ago, and I've been with my husband, Charlie, now for almost married 15 years. So we've been together 16 and a half years. On our honeymoon in Telluride, we were living in Florida. We saw a coffee house in the mountains, and he said, that's my dream. But we were blending 3 teenage girls in high school. So there was no room to think about anything. And he had been in fundraising, okay? He had sold the big buckets of cookie dough in schools and had a very successful fundraising business until the recession hit in 2008, and it went away. So he'd gone back to medical sales. Well, about 2012, maybe 2011, I can't remember what the date was, his old fundraising guys came to him and said, you've got to get back into fundraising, but you need to do coffee. Well, there was that coffee thing again. He'd gotten this hit, way on our honeymoon. There was the coffee thing again. So Charlie starts researching it, and he finds a company up here in Helen, Georgia. And it's called Jumpin' Goat Coffee Roasters. So he's just picking the guy's brain about fundraising. Well, we end up buying a license to sell it or to roast in Destin. We're not going to open a brick and mortar. We had no desire. We're going to get the kids through school. He's just going to do wholesale business. The man who originally started with Jumpin' Goat asked us, would you be willing to buy us out or buy me out? It was a little nerve-wracking, big investment, but we did. We bought Jumpin' Goat and came up here. But what was interesting is I was doing my work and I'm watching Charlie, and he's just living on that hamster wheel, and he's working hard because I had been the main investor. And it was a little scary, right? It was a little scary for me to put that chunk of money in there because I've had so many other things happen in my life, but I did it. And I saw him really running himself into the ground. And I had him listen to an audio one day, poverty consciousness versus prosperity consciousness. He said, I'm in poverty consciousness. I said, why? He said, well, I want wholesale business, but I don't want to be on the road anymore. He goes, I want to be home with you and the dogs. I just want to, have a life. So in that moment, he let go of what he thought he should be doing. He moved out of a low worthiness quotient, and he chose prosperity consciousness by loving himself. He let go of guilt. And here's what was so interesting, because he was really listening to his intuition, right? He's really saying, my heart is telling me to do this. My head says, no, you need to go after wholesale business, but his heart, which is, that's the source speaking to you, God's speaking to you. So he listened, he chose unconditional self-love. Wholesale business started flooding in. He quit going after wholesale business. It starts flooding in. I mean, it is just pouring in, pouring in, pouring in, pouring in. It was like, whoa. Well, not 2-3 months later, a property comes up for sale, 7.5 acres at the base of this beautiful mountain here in the Helen, Georgia area. And there's his dream. Remember how you said he wanted to have a place in the mountains that you could really, he wanted to have an experience. Our little store that we bought was more about the roasting. You could get a cup of coffee, and it was 700 square feet. You couldn't fulfill your dream there, right? This property comes up for sale, and it had a building on it that used to be an old motorcycle church. It's looking straight up at a mountain. He comes home and he's listening, right? His whole body, your soul talks to you through your body, and his whole body is excited, and but it's scary, right? It's scary to even look at the possibilities. And he said, this is it. You're not going to believe what just happened. And so he started listening to his intuition about what needed to be done, how he was going to go about the process of, looking at purchasing this company. And once again, I was going to be the big investor. It was scary. It was really scary. But my intuition said, do it. Do it. I will not lie. I was scared because it was a big chunk. But my intuition said, do it. That company, it's now Jump and Go Coffee Roasters and Tasting Room, and we're in Cleveland. It's 5 miles from Helen. In this January, we were up 34% in our growth. It has been that way from day one. Every year it grows and grows and grows and grows, and the return on investment is amazing. And so to watch this and to see that my husband, through watching me loving myself, learned to love himself, and he owned his worth, said yes to his intuition, and now he's thriving. And what's so fun is to watch him, because he was doing this at 65. Okay, this started at 65 years old when we opened the second company. He said, most people are retiring at 65, and I'm starting another company, another business. And I said, you're never going to sit still. He's ADD. He's never going to sit down. He will die if he sits down because he will implode. So I said, you just do what you're doing. And to see him, I mean, right now our kitchen is covered in all kinds of bags of herbs and all kinds of crazy things because he's creating.
I love the story, and I love that you acknowledge the scary part of it, because when you get out of your comfort zone, especially when you had the experiences you did with money, it would have to be scary. And like, I remember the day back in 2008, sitting in that on my sofa in the living room there, hitting the buy button, scared to death, like shaking, hitting that buy button. Tell me your process. What gets you through from scared to doing it?
Well, my first thing to do is I sit down and I get grounded. I go into meditation. I open up my crown and allow myself to receive energy to wash through me. I call it getting grounded in God's light. So I first do that. And then I go into gratitude for what's good in my life, because that even puts you in a higher receptive, intuitive state. If you're in fear, you're going to have a hard time receiving information. So this gets some of the fear, alleviates some of the fear, and puts me into this intuitive place. Then I'll ask my inner child, what's scaring you? So I become the divine mother to her. And for me, a process that I like to do is I start journaling. I start, thank you for the healing that's happening here. Thank you for the love. Thank you for, whatever is going on. And then I'll ask her what's going on. Now, I love this tool, and I was guided. This was through guidance that I got years ago. But I'll take the pen and switch it to the other hand and let the little kid inside of me answer, because that takes you into your intuitive mind rather than your analytical mind. Even like, so if you're right-handed, you go to your left brain, which is analytical. And most people think, well, if I'm left-handed, I go to my right brain, which is your creative, intuitive. But 66% of left-handed people still go to their left brain. So there's a whole book on this called The Power of Your Other Hand. It's really cool. But anyway, so I talk to little Terri like that to the point where I can get to the belief, or I just look at her intuitively. I mean, I see her so clearly and say, what is the belief? So as soon as I recognize the belief, you always know, like, oh yeah, that's the belief that's creating havoc in my life. Yeah, you're done, and I'll see myself, I visualize clearing it. I like to visualize a big rose. I visualize the rose as a vacuum cleaner, pulling that energy out. I imagine it leaving every cell of my body. And I send that rose, and in my aura field as well, and my grounding, I send it out. I blow it up like confetti, sending it back to the universe with love. And then I'll say, well, what's my truth? Which is a soul retrieval, and I'll call in my truth. Now, if I'm still in chaos, if I'm still struggling, that's when I open up to my guides. Now, I'm not religious, but I do happen. For years I talked to Michael, the archangel. Um, Now I really talk to Christ and Mother Mary. They're the ones who are guiding me on a daily basis. And again, it's not religious. It's just that's who's showing up. I sit literally on my couch, at the end of my couch, and I feel them come in and sit down with me. And so I do the same thing. I talk with them. I sit in meditation. I get visions. Um, I, I'll write questions. I'll get answers. Like I remember years ago, I was asking about money, and I switched the pen to the other hand, and it said, I didn't put you on this planet to suffer. I put you on this planet to prosper. That was a big one.
I love it.
Now, I don't think my analytical mind would have said that. It was when I went into my intuitive mind. So there's so many ways to connect to your intuition. Another thing that I get, if I don't get just a clear hit, I pay attention to the signs. I pay attention, and I get some crazy signs. I have dreams. I have animals that come into my space. I might hear a song on the radio that I keep hearing the same verse over and over again. I am just constantly paying attention. And to me, it's like everything is of God. Everything, the desk I'm sitting at, the chair I'm sitting in, the pictures around us, the scenery, it's everything is energy. Everything is of God. And if I am seeking an answer and I'm holding that intention that it is healed, because that's the first thing that I do is I visualize that I have an answer. Okay. And I feel it as so, and I go into gratitude, and then I start this whole process. So I trust. Over time, I've taken baby steps of doing this. I've just seen so many amazing things shift in my life. So why wouldn't money and investing be the same as how I deal with a relationship? I'm going to get my information and I'm going to act on it. It's inspired action. It means from the spirit. By going within, loving myself, being kind and gentle to myself, clearing out emotional chaos in whatever way works, and then listening to the guidance and taking action.
Oh, Terri, love it. Very well said, by the way. There's, you said it brilliantly, and you're speaking to the choir when when we're having this conversation, and our listeners as well. So thank you for being so real in this conversation and deep. I love that you went to the places that you did. You allowed yourself to go there, and so grateful for that. And I definitely want to have you back on the show. But what would you leave our listeners with? Just a little bit of guidance from you. Terri wisdom.
Terri wisdom. For me, stepping into intuition really has been about stopping the performance. No longer making others the authority, others' opinions, others' feelings, others' needs, to really put God first in my life by honoring what is going on inside of me, what my body's telling me, what my feelings are telling me, and then taking inspired action into prosperity consciousness.
It's awesome. Thank you. Well said. Thanks again, Terri. Appreciate
Thank you so much. I loved it.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Intuitive Investing. If you enjoyed this week's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. For other helpful resources, please visit sterlingstockpicker.com. That's STERLING stockpicker.com to access free intuitive investing training.